Hey y'all, welcome back to Girls Like You. My name is Mikhail, and in today's video I am going to be talking about travel nurse housing options, specifically shared housing pros and cons. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump on into it. So first I wanted to briefly discuss the travel nurse pay package. If you are already familiar with this, then feel free to just go ahead and skip on forward to my actual shared housing information. But I figured that this part of the video might put some things into perspective whenever you figure out why I personally had decided on shared housing options. As many of you know, and if you don't, what you will hear often by travel nurses is that we earn the bulk of our money through non-taxed housing stipends and per diems. We are paid an hourly rate for however many hours we work that week, whether it's 36, 48, 60, whatever. But on top of that, we are also paid these stipends or per diem rates. For example, last month on my contract, in total of stipends and per diems, I was offered or said to be given $1,106 to cover housing expenses and meals. The reason why they pay us stipends is because we are expected to be duplicating our expenses. So as a traveling professional, it is expected that we have a permanent place of residence. For example, I'll use the state of Illinois. I have a permanent residence in the state of Illinois, and then I accept a travel nursing contract in Washington somewhere, right? So I'm expected to be duplicating my housing and meal expenses, or not necessarily meals, but your housing expenses, because I'm paying rent and utilities to a location in Illinois, but now I also have to pay rent and utilities at a location in Washington. So we are given stipends and per diems that are so high because we have to pay for two places of living, not just one. That brings me to the debate, which I don't really see it as a debate because most people are going to tell you to do the second option, but I'll start by telling y'all the first option. The first option, when you are given your or whenever you're reviewing your contract, your housing and your meal stipend, you are given the option to let your company, because this isn't always the case, but for the most part, your agency will offer to find your housing for you. If you opt for your agency to find housing for you, then that means that you will not receive the housing stipend. I'm pretty sure you will still receive a meal stipend, but that is significantly less than the housing stipend. I don't have any numbers for you, but let's just, for the sake of the moment, act like that entire stipend that you could have received, you won't, because you opted for your agency to find housing for you. Some of the pros of having your agency find housing for you is that you might not have time. It could be very last minute when you accept your contract and you just don't have time to fish around for housing. Or you might just be struggling to find something that you feel is affordable. So it's convenient for you to just have your agency take over that responsibility. Another pro of that is because you have your agency finding housing for you, you don't have any monies that you have to pay up front because your agency is going to have all of that taken care of you before you even move in. Now, some cons of having your agency find housing for you is that they aren't going to be as concerned as maybe you would with finding a nice place. I'm not going to say they're going to throw you in the ghetto or the slums, but they're more concerned with making sure that you have a roof over your head and somewhere to sleep at night whenever you get off of work. Another con of having your agency find housing for you is that you don't know anything about the area. You haven't been able to do your research. You don't know how safe it is. So there's that. Another con of having your agency find housing for you is that if you have any problems with where they placed you, it's like going through a third party like Expedia. If you have any issues, you can't really take care of them on your own. You have to go through your agency and have them address everything because they paid for it. They know how much it was worth. They know how much they spent, yada, 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 right? Difficult, Who wants to do that? The last con that I can think of when it comes to having your agency choose your housing for you is that you don't get that stipend. You don't get that stipend. And need I say anything else? You don't get the stipend. Say that agency finds you a place and it is in the slums. Rent at that spot might be $500, and if your stipend is $1,000 a week, you are losing out on so much money and you don't even know it. That's the crazy thing, you don't even know it, because you have given them permission to keep your money and go out and find housing for you, when you could probably find housing significantly cheaper and use that extra stipend money to pocket and put away for something else. So, option one, company housing. I told you the pros and the cons. Option number two is to take the stipend. I say take the stipend. Ask anybody, they probably are gonna say take the stipend. The reason why I say take the stipend is simple. You can find some place that is significantly cheaper and you get to pocket the money. So that's pro number one of finding your own housing. Pro number two of taking the stipend and finding your own housing is that you can be picky. You can look wherever you want. You have time to research the neighborhoods. You have time to look into crime rates and safety concerns, all of that before you choose a place. It's not just picked and given to you. You actually get to see for yourself. One thing to consider when finding housing, whether you choose to have the company find it for you or you decide to find your own housing, is what other people or animals, I guess, you'll be bringing with you. Are you traveling alone? Will it just be you? Or are you bringing your family and your kids? Are you bringing any pets with you? So whenever I go places, I have to keep in mind that I have a pet. So wherever I go to stay, there may be additional fees for my pet. Some cons of taking the stipend are that it can be a headache. You might struggle to find what you need because you have to do all of that research yourself. It can get overwhelming. You don't always know what you're working with. Sometimes things fall through. Depending on how quick your contract is coming up, you might just not have time to find housing. But for the most part, the pros, from my experience and from what other nurses are more than likely going to tell y'all, is that the pros outweigh the cons whenever it comes to choosing the stipend. Take the stipend. After you have decided to take the stipend, you have several housing options. This is why I say taking the stipend and finding your own housing can become overwhelming, because you have so many platforms to use to find housing that it kind of almost gets on your nerves even searching. It's like apartment hunting. If you just don't enjoy it, then it can be a nuisance. Some places that you can search for housing are apartment complexes. You can reach out directly to apartment complexes, but what I will say is that a good portion of them are not going to come furnished. What I've heard of other nurses doing is going and renting furniture or going and buying furniture. Some people say that it's cheaper, it's easier, it's completely up to you, but that is not my thing. I think that's too much work and it kind of overcomplicates things unless you take an extended contract. You can also check out hotels or extended stays, motels even, if you so please. Most times extended stays offer discounts to those that are planning to stay there any longer than a month. A lot of hotels are familiar with traveling professionals and they kind of understand the nature or the lifestyle, at least, that we live. So they offer a lot of discounted rates on rooms just for us to stay there. Another option for housing would be to stay with a family member or a friend. Your friend or family member is able to sublease one of their rooms or their entire unit to you. You are just responsible for making sure that you pay them at minimum the market value rate for that unit or that house. Other places that you can look for housing are Search engines. Housing search engines, there are quite a few. I'm really only familiar with travelnursinghousing.com, furnishedfinders.com. I recently heard about Zeus Living, Sonders, and Hello Landing. I, on my last contract, found my place to live in through Furnished Finders. Furnished Finders and AirBNB and all of those other search engines that I told y'all about, actually, they will list houses for rent, rooms for rent, condos for rent, townhouses for rent, sometimes apartments for rent if your apartment is like individually owned, or if an apartment unit is individually owned by somebody else and they will like rent it out. I found a Furnished Finder. When I found my spot, the agency that I was working with was not offering to find housing. It was a rapid response contract. I didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of research. So initially I looked into the hotel option. My stipend for my contract was $1,106 a week. That added up to roughly $4,400 a month that I was given to cover housing expenses in my home location and housing expenses in my work location. My rent for home was already roughly $1,200. So I was not looking to pay anything close to that while I was away for work. I was trying to pocket the bulk of my stipend. So I knew that my contract was going to be short term. It was only 4 weeks. I was going to be working majority of the days out of the week. So I wasn't even going to be at wherever I stayed at often. So I wasn't too concerned with my amenities and stuff being luxury. I wasn't concerned with like having a lot of space or privacy because I knew that I wasn't going to spend a lot of time there. Guess how much my rent was? Guess how much the rent was? The rent for my housing was $500 just for that 1 month that I was there. I told y'all my housing stipend was $1,106 a week. So for the month, it was roughly $4,400. I spent $500 on housing. Now that doesn't include meals and everything, but I was able to pocket well over $3,000. And the reason why I say well over $3,000 is because instead of bringing my dog, which I actually could have brought my dog and she said it wasn't going to be an additional fee, but I figured it would be better if I just paid the sitter to keep my dog while I worked. So I paid $500 in rent, and then I paid $450 for the dog sitter to keep my dog for the month. So all in all, I ended up pocketing like $3,300 out of my stipend. If I would have had company housing take care of it, y'all, I wouldn't have received any of that. So that's the reason why they say take the stipend. I'm sure y'all want to know where did I stay at. So using those search engines, like I said, I used Furnished Finders. On Furnished Finders, they had houses for rent and they had rooms for rent. I saw houses, but since I had decided not to bring my pet, I was okay with just renting a room. That brings me to shared housing. Shared housing is anytime you pretty much share a space. You're renting a room, so you are sharing all of the other common living areas. In the house that I stayed in, I have a video that I'm gonna pull up for you guys. I am pretty much going on a tour of the house. The house that I stayed in had a living room, it had a dining room, it had a laundry room, it had a kitchen, it had 2 bedrooms, there was a backyard. Oh, I said 2 bedrooms. It had 2 bathrooms. There was the backyard, and then there were 4 bedrooms in total. And each bedroom was 1 tenant. I rented one of those rooms for $500 to stay in the entire month of July, I believe. Me and my other 3 housemates shared the common areas. We shared the living room, we shared the laundry room, we shared the bathrooms, we shared the backyard. Pros of staying in shared housing is that they are typically very cheap. $500, you couldn't beat it. Another pro of staying in a shared housing unit is that they are typically fully furnished. You don't have to worry about bringing anything. I would probably advise bringing your own sheets, but there's typically a bed, there are appliances, there are dishes, there are tables, there's couches, there's a bed. All of that stuff is already there. You don't have to worry about it. You just grab your clothes and you go. Another pro of shared housing is, I kind of hit on this already because I said you have access to like the laundry room, but for the most part you will have access to amenities. Depending on where you stay, there might not always be a laundry room equipped with like a washer and dryer, but where I've stayed at so far, and I've chosen shared housing options twice now, there has always been a washer and dryer. So if those are there in your unit or in your house, then for the most part, you are typically welcome to use them. You have full access to all amenities in the house. Another pro of shared housing is that if you use the search engines that I mentioned, for the most part, you are going to be rooming or housing with other healthcare professionals. In the house that I stayed at, the other 3 rooms were occupied by nurses as well. 2 of them worked day shift and 2 of them, including myself, worked night shift. It was convenient because we all understood each other's lifestyle, and for the most part, not even for the most part, there were no issues. It was actually kind of relieving some days because as travelers, we don't have a home unit. We see a lot of different practice methods, so we would come back to the house and we would kind of socialize or congregate in the kitchen and just complain. But it was relieving to know that even though we were at different facilities, we still could relate to a lot of the things that were taking place at work. I didn't really classify AirBNB as a part of the search engine just because anybody can go and search for Airbnbs, but quite frankly, anybody can get on those other search engines as well and request housing. Whenever I requested my housing, to my knowledge, there was no background check. I put in very little information about myself whenever I was approved, and I kind of just showed up. Those other search engines, even though I said that they are targeted for healthcare professionals or just traveling professionals in general, you're going to want to keep in mind that these are complete strangers altogether. There are going to be people of the opposite sex that typically stay with you. So if that is a concern for you, then also keep that in mind as well. Some of the cons to shared living or shared housing are privacy. You do not have the house or the apartment to yourself. So you can't just walk out in your birthday suit whenever you want to because there are other people living there, so you have to be considerate. That would make the next con. Although you are living with other people and you do expect everybody to be considerate, it doesn't always happen. How much do you value your privacy? I knew I wasn't gonna hardly be at the house, so I was like, I can settle for a little bit. How hard of a sleeper are you? If your roommate, or not your roommate, if your housemate is up late because they work night shifts and they're off that night, are you gonna be able to sleep through the noise that you hear? Are you gonna be able to speak up when they're just a little bit too rowdy? That's something else to consider. Another con of shared housing is in its name, shared. You are literally sharing everything. Everybody doesn't clean the same. Some people are a little bit bougier than others. I personally am not. Now, I can't just live in no trifling environment, but everything is shared. The bed that you are more than likely gonna be sleeping on, somebody else has slept on. The dishes that you are gonna eat off of, other people have ate off of. wherever you sit down, somebody else has already sat there. You don't really know how everybody cleans, and everybody might not clean like you do. So keep in mind that unless you come in and you bring your own dishes and your own pots and pans and stuff, things are going to be shared. I did have like my own Tupperware, but like I said, for the most part, things were not dirty. I could tell that their cleaning style was not the same as mine, but also at this house that I stayed in, the owner actually hired a cleaning service that would come out once a week and they would clean all of the common areas. So the living room, the kitchen, the laundry room, the bathrooms. Another con of shared housing, and I think the last one that I can really think of, is comfort. For a short period of time, I was uncomfortable whenever I got to the house because I felt like I was imposing. I felt like I was stepping into somebody else's happy home and I was just in the way. The people that were in the house that I stayed at when I first got there had been there for almost 3 months. I don't think I cooked in that kitchen until their contracts ended and they left. And the reason for that is because I just didn't feel comfortable. I'm also not a huge socialite, so I didn't want to be in the kitchen and they come out and they feel like they have to speak to me because I'm here. I, on the other hand, I'm gonna speak, but I'm not gonna try to carry out an entire conversation. And sometimes that's how it was. When I get home from work, I don't always wanna talk. When I wake up for work, I want to stay quiet until I get to work. There's a lot of antisocial things that I do when I don't really want to be bothered. So if you're anything like that and you're just literally not going to be able to adapt, that might be something that you want to consider when choosing shared housing. But for the most part, it wasn't a huge con for me. Like I said, once their contracts ended, it seemed like it was my house. Like I was the first person that got there. So when other people moved in after me, I was in the kitchen, I was cooking, I was meal prepping. Please, I let you stay here. That's how I felt. Would I choose shared housing again? Yes, I would. So based on all of that information, would you guys have your agency find housing for you, or would you take the stipend? And if you would take the stipend, would you consider staying in shared housing? Why or why not? Leave that in the comment section below. If you like this video and you found it informative, if you want to see more videos like this, then be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. If you feel so inclined, then share. But don't forget to hit subscribe. I will see y'all in my next video. Thank y'all for watching.